Hey, what's up y'all? This is GC Kinsey, here to break down one of the most ridiculous transphobic sentiments I have ever had leveled at me. But why can't you just keep your gender to yourself? So, fun story. One time I came out as non-binary trans to someone who I had hoped would be supportive, but instead it didn't go well. Not only did this person not even make an effort to understand, but they also used a suppression tactic that I've seen leveled against a lot of other trans people online. But your gender is your personal business. You can do whatever you want in the privacy of your own home, but don't force your gender on me. Just keep your gender to yourself. And I want to talk about why that's completely bogus. Now, if I were the kind of person who knew how to come up with witty comebacks in the moment, I would have said something like, oh, keep my gender to myself? You mean like cis people who color code their infants so that all the strangers around know what kind of genitals they have? But unfortunately, I didn't think of that until like months later. Oops. But even though that conversation is long in the past now, it actually came up again recently with the same person. So I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about it with all of you, just in case you ever get hit with this. So without further ado, here are my top 3 reasons why you can't just keep your gender to yourself. Number 1, gender is everywhere. Seriously, you can't escape it. From the moment you're born, it's assigned to you, sometimes incorrectly, and then it follows you around for the rest of your life. It's on all of your legal documents, it's on every form you have to fill out, and if you ever need to change it, it is a lengthy and costly process. And hey, did you know I can't even legally change my gender to what it really is? That's right, I live in a state that doesn't offer non-binary driver's licenses. Good times. And aside from the legal aspect of gender, there's the social aspect as well, which can be just as oppressive, if not more so. People use gender as one of the biggest bases for how we relate to each other and treat each other and interact. There are tons of social rules and scripts rooted in gender, and they are ingrained in us from a very early age. One of the most obvious examples of this is gender roles. Society has very specific behaviors that are associated with being a man or being a woman. Non-binary people are left out of this entirely, and it's heavily expected that you conform to those roles. Whether it's how you dress and groom yourself, what kind of toys you play with as a child, what kind of job you have as an adult, what your responsibilities are around the house, what kinds of emotional labor you might perform. All of that is influenced by and part of gender roles. People are complex, so obviously these gender roles are not going to fit everyone. But because they're so influential, they can make us feel limited and boxed in. Which is why it blows my mind when cis people make the argument that trans folks are forcing our genders onto them, as if the binary isn't forced onto all of us 24/7. And by the way, when a trans person wants to be called the correct name and pronouns and other gender-affirming language, that's not forcing our gender onto anyone else. All we want is the same basic level of respect that everyone else is afforded already. So, bottom line, it's not practical or possible to keep our genders in the privacy of our own home when we live in a society, especially one where the idea of gender is so pervasive. Which brings me to my next point. Number 2, we can't keep our gender to ourselves even if we try. Guess what happens if I do keep my gender to myself? For example, if I walk up to the cash register to buy something, I don't tell the cashier my pronouns, I don't tell the cashier what my gender is, I don't even say anything at all aside from the usual, hi, how are you kind of small talk. But here's what I get. Ma'am, this register's open. Hi, how are you today, ma'am? Have a great day, ma'am. And then I wind up with a headache and shaking with rage while I spend the next 24 to 72 hours spiraling in my dysphoria. It doesn't matter if you keep your gender to yourself. People are gonna put one onto you anyway. Because like I said in point number 1, gender is everywhere, and there is no escape. So that's why I don't keep my gender to myself, and I do everything I can to outwardly express it. Because if I don't, people will put a gender onto me, and it will always, always, always be the wrong one. If a cis man got called ma'am or miss at a cash register, of course he would be like, oh, actually it's sir. But when I do that as a visibly trans person, suddenly that's different. Obviously, this is a really big and really messed up double standard, which leads me to my final point. Number 3. Cis people don't keep their gender to themselves, so why should trans people have to? When a cis person tells a trans person, you should keep your gender to yourself, what they really mean is, your gender is weird and makes me uncomfortable and you should put it away so I don't have to think about it. But notice how they don't say this to anyone else. When someone has a baby, one of the first things people ask is, oh, is it a boy or a girl? Setting aside the fact that those aren't even the only two options, these people are still asking about gender. No one is expecting that baby to keep their gender to themselves. Instead, everyone is just dying to know what it is. Hence the pink and blue color coding scheme. People will ask about the gender of pets too, and will apologize if they accidentally guess it wrong, even though animals don't have a concept of gender identity like humans do. Fun fact, I once had an AMAB hamster with a feminine name and she/her pronouns, and guess what? She did not care. Yet when a trans person is asking for this exact same level of baseline respect, to have their gender seen and affirmed just like everybody else, instead they get told, oh no, keep that private, that's inappropriate, that's going to confuse the children. It's clear to me that this double standard, this idea that cis people's genders are normal and trans people's genders are not, is the real crux of the issue. So for all of my fellow trans folks out there, the next time a cis person tells you to keep your gender to yourself, I dare you to challenge them to do the same. Has anyone ever told you to keep your gender to yourself? Do you have any insights about rebuttals that I didn't include? Do you have any questions about all of this? Please drop a comment below and let's get a discussion going. You can also hit me up on social media. I am GC Kinsey across all platforms. And while you're here, feel free to check out some of my other videos. I have more vlogs like this one about my experiences as a queer person. I also have makeup tutorials and cosplay music videos. So don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss anything new. And with that, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for your support. I hope you learned a lot, and I will see you on the next one.